Give me the Bible, star of gladness gleaming, to cheer the wanderer lone and tempest-tossed. No storms can hide that radiance peaceful beaming, since Jesus came to seek and save the lost. Give me the Bible, holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day. Give me the Bible when my heart is broken, when sin and grief have filled my soul with fear. Give me the precious words by Jesus spoken. Hold up faith's lamp to show my Savior near. Give me the Bible, holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day. Give me the Bible, all my steps enlighten, teach me the dangers of these realms below. That lamp of safety o'er the gloom shall brighten, that light alone the path of peace can show. Give me the Bible, holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day. Give me the Bible, lamp of life immortal, hold up that splendor by the open grave. Show me the light from heaven's shining portals, show me the glory gilding Jordan's wave. Give me the Bible, holy message shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day. Break thou the bread of life, dear Lord, to me, as thou didst break the loaves beside the sea. Beyond the sacred page, I seek thee, Lord. My spirit pants for thee, O living word. Bless thou the truth, dear Lord, to me, as thou didst bless the bread by Galilee. Then shall all bondage cease, all fetters fall, and I shall find my peace, my all in all. Good afternoon. Let's edify one another, shall we? Good to see you all here. And I got CJ kind of in the background. He's hunting down something or other. And we are here on another episode of Study to Show Ourselves Approved, where we study the scriptures to show ourselves approved. Approved not unto men, but unto rather God, workmen that are not to be ashamed, handling aright the word of truth. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. Or remember that the word of truth is God's word. And so therefore, seeing how it is his word, we wish and we desire and we need to handle it properly. So when we study it and we study to try to understand it in the way that God wants it to be understood, we then handle it properly. Treat it with the proper respect and pass it on so that others will do likewise. We are in the book of Genesis, for we are beginning in the beginnings, or beginning at the beginnings. Something to that effect. And we have begun last week, we left off in Genesis chapter 18. And just to bring us up to, wow, that's a nice, lovely white section there. Thank you. Boom, 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 boom. Boom. There we are. To bring us up to date, up to speed, catch us back up. And hello, Carol. I want to say hello. Pretty sure I didn't say that earlier. Hello, CJ, as well. Hello. He's very intent on tagging people. Thank you, CJ, for stepping in and doing that. I decided to make a new cider. Instead of my normal cranberry cider, which uses mandarin oranges, I used apple juice. And boy, is that nice and smooth and is not whatsoever sweet. I don't need it too sweet. I need it just the right amount of sweetness and no sugar, or not too much sugar. And so I used diet cranberry juice and apple juice, as well as the rest of the ingredients that goes into the cranberry cider, minus the mandarin oranges. Boy, that's really good. Anyhow, okay, tangent aside, let's get down to business, shall we? The Lord appears unto Abraham on the plains of Mamre, as he has been resting there for quite some time, as in he's been living in the plains of Mamre for quite a while. And he's now sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. It gets hot. They didn't have air conditioning. So what they did, fascinating tents. You know, we have tents. Boy, I'm playing a CJ. Forgetting to shut off my phone. Look at that. CJ shared a video. I wonder what video he's sharing. Not even a grin out of him. Tisk, tisk. Oh, there it is. Their tents are not like our tents that we have today. You know, we've got the pup tents and what have you, the fancy 5-room tents, although, they might have had 5-room tents. But their tents would have a flap that folded, that was held up. I don't have any examples, unfortunately. I wish I did. That acted as a roof so they could sit there in shade and catch the breeze as it blew by. So Abraham's sitting here in the heat of the day and just cooling himself off. In Mediterranean cultures, as well as we're familiar with it in the culture of Mexico and South America as well. They have this time of day when it becomes so hot because they're closest to the equator, that the temperature is always really warm. Uh, but they have this time of day when no work is typically done. They will go home, they will take a nap for a couple 3 hours, and then they will come back in the cool of the day as the temperature cools off and work again for several hours. Well, in this particular case of the day, he's resting. Hello, Reba. Good to see you. And as he's sitting here taking in this cool, taking in the cool breeze in the heat of the day here, he's sitting in the tent door. He lifts up his eyes and he sees these three men standing before him. And as he sees these men, well, he kind of springs into action, doesn't he? My screen is a little off. There we go. Now I can see the comments. He springs into action. He jumps up. He runs to them, and he says to them after bowing himself to the ground. He says, "My Lord, now if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant." We talked about last week how this was not him saying, "Okay, this is God. I got to bow myself to him. I got to worship him," and but this is rather the term of respect that was due to, or that was offered to anybody. We would remember doing. We would put it in terms of the Middle Ages, the medieval times of the world history, and we still do it to a certain degree when we address people as sir, or when, for example, we meet our representatives, or we meet someone who's in the military, and we give them, we address them by title, by office, rather than just say, "Hey, John." And so what he does is he goes to them and he says, he bows himself to the ground. He gives them respect. And he says, "My Lord." And this is, again, a sign of respect. This is not uncommon. And this would have been Abraham's greeting, whether it was to the Lord above or it was to someone, some merchant or some beggar. Just someone passing by. He gives this respect. "My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant." And he goes to them and he says, he offers food. He's hospitable to them. "Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched. Wash your feet. Rest yourselves under the tree. Come, I'll even give you some. I'll give you some bread, and you can refresh yourselves. It's noontime. You must be hungry. Let me feed you." And to which CJ says, "Yeah, sure. I'll take some. Got any chili?" And what they say is, "So do as thou hast said." Now, I'm not just picking this up from the text, because a lot of this attitude, a lot of this culture is defined or is synonymous and carried forward into writings of other people. You can see this type of attitude from historical documents. You can see this type of attitude in books that have been written. For example, 1001 Arabian Nights. Now, CJ may think that was just simply a Disney cartoon, also known as Aladdin. No, that's not. That was an actual book written, and they get pretty gruesome in that book, by the way. I have read the 1001 Arabian Nights, and um, Scheherazade is, wow, um, she was one interesting princess. Let me tell you that. She saved an entire nation full of ladies by her 1001 stories. Um, if you've never read the book, it's quite an interesting read. But it portrays um, the attitude, the culture that was prevalent in the Middle East. And one thing we understand or need to understand about culture in the Middle East is that it doesn't change overnight. In the Bedouin tribes and in a lot of these areas, culture takes generations to change. And when I say generations, I'm meaning hundreds of to thousands of years. And one of the things that you can see through history is that a lot of this, a lot of things, a lot of traditions stayed the same over time. And the giving of respect to people is one of those things. Um, Not always, not all men had the same ideals. But here's the thing, these three men agreed to his proposal. And I want to draw your attention in reference to this to a passage you may not have ever connected to Genesis chapter 18, verses 1 through 5. But it's a very interesting one. Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 2. When the Hebrew writer talks about in verse 1, let brotherly love continue, he then follows that up by saying, be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Often I change this because that's what I should do. And the word is messengers. It's transliterated as angels. It's angelos in the Greek, and it's translated, it's transliterated, brought over, substituted English letters for the Greek and brought over into the, Greek, or to the English language. But it means messengers. But in this case, Hebrews 13:2 is a direct correlation of Genesis 18 verses 1 through 5, because Abraham was hospitable. He entertained strangers. He opened his doors. He was the epitome of Romans chapter 12 and verse 13, where they say, Christians are to be distributing to the necessity of saints, but also given to hospitality. That means your doors should be open to those who are strangers. You are to be helping those who are in need, those who are passing by. But the other thing is that for thereby some have entertained messengers unawares. And in Genesis chapter 18, rather, what we see is that Abraham didn't know that this was the Lord and his messengers. He just saw three men. Does it say in 18 verse 1? It does say that the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, but it doesn't say that Abraham recognized him as the Lord. It just said that Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, three men stood by him. So Abraham sees these men. He goes to them. He is hospitable. He opens up the door. He gives them water. He makes bread for them, or actually has Sarah do it. And he grabs a calf out of the herd, brings it in, kills it, and makes them, gives them, provides food for them. Brings butter and brings milk and the calf, and he sets it by them, and they did eat. So we pick up in verse 9, and now here's where it would get strange for you and I, as well as for Abraham. For they say, where is Sarah, thy wife? We haven't seen him introduce Sarah, his wife, but she would have been an integral part of serving the men. Remember, he ran into the tent and he says to Sarah, make ready 3 measures of fine meal and knead it and make cakes on the hearth. Who's making the bread? Sarah. Who's bringing it out when it's ready? But they say, where is Sarah, thy wife? So even if they didn't, if Sarah hadn't been introduced to them, this is where it gets weird. This is where Abraham begins to recognize that this is the Lord. This is not just some man passing by worthy of respect, but this is indeed the Lord. For this man says, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. Now, strangers don't talk that way, do they? And so Abraham comes to understand very quickly, obviously, that this is God. Sarah, who's in the tent door, been making bread, obviously, but she's in the tent door. She's listening in, because we talked about last time how why is it that you are really open to entertaining strangers in Abraham's day? Anybody remember? CJ, did you go back and watch last week's lesson? No, he got too busy with his debate.
I was here.
You were?
Yeah, I was answering questions. It was not a live one. You pre-recorded.
Oh, that's right. Last week was okay. You were here. You had to watch last week's, didn't you? Do you remember? Hi, Sister T. News. Thank you, Reba. Awesome. That's right. News. Cuts off half my face when. There we go. So, what would Sarah be doing? She'd be listening in the doorway, wouldn't she? Because she wants to hear the news too. So she hears, she's at the doorway. She hears this prophecy. I'm going to return to thee according to the time of life. Lo, Sarah, your wife's going to have a son. Sarah hears this. She's in the tent door. She hears it, and she has a response. Now, Abraham and Sarah, it makes a point here. They're old. They're well stricken in age. They're so old that there is no way, no natural way that Sarah should be able to have a son, a child. Last year we got to really be introduced to that time of life that women go through called menopause. And the doctor had to explain it to us because Amy is approaching that time of life, and Sarah has been past that. She's well stricken in age. She's well past that age, and is unable to have children anymore. So Sarah, who knows this in her mind, I can't have a child. I've done past that age. That ship done sailed. She laughs within herself. After I'm waxed old, shall I have pleasure? Am I old? And my Lord's also old. You know, we talk about First Peter, First Peter chapter 3, verse 4.
3.
3. Wives are to be in subjection to your own husbands, and they could. Peter compares that to the holy women of the old time, just as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And what we find here in Genesis 18 and verse 12 is Sarah doing just that. My Lord being old also. Notice she says, shall I have pleasure and or my Lord is the implication behind this. Shall my Lord and I have pleasure, both of us being old? Sarah is a very unique individual. I don't think this was brought out in our lesson on her, was it, CJ? But she was concerned about her husband. She loved Abraham. Shall I have pleasure, I who am old, and my Lord also? There's some care going on in that verse that it's never really struck me. But Sarah laughs. Now notice it also says she laughed within herself. I kind of see one of those quiet little snorts. Do you ever get that impression, CJ? Anybody else see that? Sarah, as she's sitting there, kind of snorts quietly, and speaking within herself. She's like thinking, and she thinks, "Shall I'm old. Shall I have pleasure? My Lord's old also. He's just as old as I am. He's older than I am." And we've gone this whole time without having children. The Lord says to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? Saying, shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? He not only questions Abraham about her laughter, but he tells exactly her thinking, which if I was in in that place, that would rather scare me. How many of you would be rather scared, startled? Shall I have a surety bear a child which I'm old? Now he puts the question here, which I think all of us have come to recognize as one of the biggest um, theological questions out there. Is anything too hard for the Lord? And many people have posited the question. Hello, Sam. Have posited the question: can God make a stone too big for Him to lift? Of course, there is the idea, or they try to trap you, and the obvious answer is yes. If He decides He doesn't want to lift it, if He says that He will not lift it. If he limits, only if he limits himself. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Nope. God can do anything. You're right, Teresa, including limit himself.
Well, Hebrews tells us that God can't do one thing.
Lie.
It's impossible for God to lie.
That's because He's limited Himself, isn't it?
Well, you could look at it that way. It's not in His nature. So it's impossible. Like, it's not even a thought to God to limit. Because it's not there. There's no darkness in Him.
Right. But that's because He's there again. Is anything too hard for the Lord? The answer is no. Nice. You've been really working on that. It needs to build up some more, though.
I pulled this out of being a total rust bomb.
I know.
I haven't put any build up on it.
But you've okay, so you haven't actually sealed it?
No, I just finished taking it to the wire wheel,
Mm-hmm.
and then I took it to the sander, which is why it's smooth. Then I washed it.
Now it's time to seal it.
Now it's time to do the bake.
So let's put it this way. If something is too hard for the Lord, it's only because He has decided not to do it. Because He has limited Himself. The reason there's no darkness in Him is because He has determined never to do it. That's why it's impossible. If He's not capable of, if it wasn't, it's. In so doing, it's a very deep theological discussion, and it's really not like you were going to say. I bet you're going to say it's not really pertaining to this class, but right?
It's kind of philosophical, because I'm of the persuasion that God can't lie because it's not even in His nature. It's not even a thought that I could lie, but I'm not going to. It's just not a part of God's nature.
That's the thing. Why is it not part of His nature if He's all powerful?
Well, I guess in some ways He decided His nature. In some ways He decided that He's not going to.
So he removed it. He limited himself, and that's what I'm getting at. Sam says God is holy. God, there is no shadow of turning. There is no shadow. There's no evil in him because he removed any possibility of it. He said, that's not me. It is philosophical. It's theological. It's something that needs to be thought of in a different class setting. Is anything too hard for the Lord? No. O'Shea says that, and the fact that if he's going to make something he can't move, he's going to put it where he will never need to move it. And that there is another good point. Imagine having so much power that you are able to permanently stop yourself from doing something. That is the kicker right there. That CJ's mind and my mind cannot comprehend that, can we? Having so much power that you are able to permanently stop yourself from doing something.
Exactly, Stewart. That's what I just did too. Ah! That was perfect timing.
It's a mind blowing. Sam said he's holy. He separated himself from it. All right, so let's continue on. Shut the door. It's cold. They're coming in the window. Ay, ay, ay. At the time appointed, I will turn to thee according to the time of life. He reiterates, that's not the question I wanted. He reiterates the promise that he just made 3 verses ago. I will return to thee this time, according to the time of life, and Sarah will have a son. So remember that God swore by himself to Abraham. What was that one at? Hebrews talks about it, but this one, this is not it. This isn't the reference to it that it refers to. But go ahead, CJ.
I think it's Hebrews.
Hebrews refers to it, but there's an actual thing. There's an actual verse that we've already covered in just a few chapters ago, within the last few chapters, where God says, "Behold, I have sworn by myself."
Probably 15 or 17, one of the covenants.
Yes, it is one of those. Anyway, now there's a difference. One author that I've been reading makes a statement that in Genesis 17, verse 17, I'll have to find that other one later. Which I'm not entirely certain I agree with, but I thought I'd throw this one out there. When Abraham fell on his face and laughed here, he says in his heart, shall a child be born to him that is 100 years old, and shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? Supposedly, this is supposed to be one of delight. Yet, delighted astonishment. um, that Abraham, he believes God, but he's astonished, in that he's 100 years old, Sarah's 90, and um, shall this actually come to pass? Um, but God reiterates his covenant. Now, like I said, I'm not sure I entirely agree with that, because it sounds like the exact same thing that Sarah says over here in Genesis 18 when
Well,
she laughs. Go ahead.
if you look at verse 18 of chapter 17, I don't think that helps his case, because the next thing he says, "Oh, take Ishmael.
Right,
Ta-
right.
Take Ishmael instead."
And he does beseech the Lord on behalf of Ishmael. Hey, I've already got Ishmael. Take him. And God says, well, no, I've already promised you Sarah's going to have one. And I'm going to fulfill that promise in essence. And, like Abraham said, or like I said, Abraham seems to say the exact same thing in an exact same manner that Sarah says over here in Genesis 18. By the way, I need to remove this tag. Thank you. So he's saying, can this thing possibly happen? And she's like, can this thing possibly happen? We're both old. But the Lord challenges Abraham on Sarah's laughter, whereas he doesn't challenge Abraham on Abraham's laughter. So there is some sort of a difference. I will grant them that. What it is, I'm not sure. But there's a reason that God challenges Abraham on behalf of Sarah, saying, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Why did Sarah laugh and say this? Is there anything too hard for the Lord? But he doesn't challenge Abraham. So after this exchange, the three men get up and they start heading towards Sodom, and Abraham walks with them to see them on their way and continues the conversation a bit. And the Lord ponders within himself, as it were, shall I hide from Abraham the thing which I do? And his reason, Sam offers up Romans 14. Let me tag this one real quick and then I'll go over there. Romans 4 verses 16 through 23. I'm not going to read all of that out loud, so I'm just going to go over there real quick and kind of peruse it to see what you're reflecting on, Sam. Does it have something to do with this? Possibly. We are dealing with Abraham after all. 16 through. Therefore it is of faith that it might be by grace, to the end that the promise might be sure to all the seed. Father of many nations, that's in 17. That's a good point, Sam. One that isn't brought out in the text of the guy that I was been reading. Abraham he believed in hope, God's promise of the son, even though he was considered dead, as in unable to produce fruit. Teresa says, so she wasn't laughing like, are you crazy, God? I'm too old to bear children. She was definitely doubting, Teresa. She's like, I can't bear children. I'm too old. I'm way past the time of life for childbearing. And my Lord is too old. So she absolutely doubted, she did not believe God or, in essence, his power, his ability, which is why God challenged her. I'm going to make note of that. Thank you, Sam. Romans 4, verses 16 through 23, in reference to the laughter. And yes, she was definitely surprised that the Lord said that. Says Carol. I mean, she was shocked that here she had laughed and said this within herself, and here this man, again, remember, these look like men. And so then suddenly this guy says, "Why did Sarah laugh?" And then she's like, I didn't laugh. Oh, yes, you did. You laughed and you said this. Wow, that would definitely put me back on my heels, wouldn't it? You? Uh,
Yeah, Romans 4 tells us that Abraham had this confidence when
yeah,
God was.
it really does. It
So,
goes back. Okay, I sit corrected.
so he laughs for some other reason.
So it might actually be that astonished delight that the author was previously, the author I've been reading was saying. Of Genesis 17:17. I'm going to put that down for a cross reference. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate that.
I don't know what to do with the next verse, though, but.
Well, remember that Ishmael is doing Genesis. Ishmael is his son, and so it is natural as a father. What in the world am I doing? It is natural as a father to look out for the. I'm going to do 16 through 25. Just for the whole sentences and stuff like that. It is natural as a father to look out for the best interest of your son. And he's like, "Hey, I've already got Ishmael. Oh, that he would live before you, that he would receive your blessing." And God said, "No, I'll bless him, but he's not the son of promise." And you can kind of understand why as well. What was that passage for Genesis? Genesis 18, what? $18.12. There we go. So you can kind of see it. Okay. $17 through $21. 16 through 25. Okay, got it. All right. Yeah, that's another good correlation to tie in there, Sam, who says, I am also thinking in Luke where the angel appeared, not an angle, but an angel, appeared to Zacharias, and yet he got a sharp rebuke for his unbelief. Abraham didn't get that rebuke. Sarah got a rebuke for her, challenge for her unbelief. Abraham didn't. So there has to be something different. And I think Sam hit the nail right on the head. So let's continue on now. God is walking with Abraham, and he's like, okay, shall I hide this thing from Abraham? One of the things we also look and we notice from God is his uh, his giving men an opportunity to grow and to do or to be their full potential. Um, and I say that having having kept up with the reading with CJ and stuff, and his reading today was with Moses and the plagues as he's been dealing with the Exodus the last few days. And that's been heavy on my mind as I'm sitting here prepping for class. And I'm thinking, okay, God raised up Pharaoh because he knew that Pharaoh was going to be hard hearted and was going to see the plagues and the miracles that God did, and was going to keep have his hard heart, and was not going to let the people go until that very last one. At which time God's power to every nation on earth would have been accurately, adequately, and stupendously just demonstrated. Um, every nation in the world that heard of what the Exodus was going to know of God's power, um, and how that the Israelites did nothing. They literally did nothing, and yet Egypt had all those plagues come upon them. Their God worked for them on their behalf, and Pharaoh let them go. Um, And God told him right up front, for this reason I have raised you or brought you into power. He was just a symptom, he was just a symbol of the hard heartedness of the entire Egyptian race. It wasn't just Pharaoh, the entire people were. And by the time the last few plagues came around, the Egyptian people were beginning to beg Pharaoh. Well, in this case, God allows Abraham to, hey, Skylar, God allows Abraham to step up to become uh, more. And how do I say that? Well, he says, should I hide from Abraham this thing I'm going to do, seeing that Abraham's going to become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him? Because I know he's going to command his children and his household after him. They're going to keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment. And so I'm going to let him know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show him justice and judgment. And he gives Abraham a picture of justice and judgment. What does he do? He tells him what is going to happen to Sodom and Gomorrah. And because their sin is, the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grievous, I'm going to go down and see what they've done. If what they've done is what is supposed to be done, it's not that he didn't know what was going to happen or what they're doing. It's that he is giving them an opportunity to repent, giving them an opportunity to be different. And he's given Abraham an opportunity to exercise justice and judgment. So, I've got 2 minutes. We're going to end up having to pick up 18 there, so I'm going to put in start here. we're going to leave off right here with and pick up there next week as Sodom is on the chopping block. Abraham is gets to plead with the Lord and learn judgment and justice. PM. What did I say? Oh, never mind. I thought I saw the timestamp and it looked like you said PM. All right. So be reading ahead, and I shall have an excellent video link next week to share with you in regards to Sodom and Gomorrah. No, we're not going to watch it, but maybe we should. Anyway, but we are going to reference it. Maybe we'll watch a little bit of it as it pertains to this, and but we will definitely be picking up here in Genesis 18:22. Continue reading ahead. We hope to get through 19, perhaps even 20 next week. And remember that we are studying here, studying God's word, not to be approved of men, but to be proved by God, for it is his word and deserving of all the respect that God is deserving as well. We want to handle it right. So as we begin at the beginning, study to show yourselves approved. I'll see you then.